Hello, everyone. This is Olga Adler with Austin Businesswoman. And today with me is an amazing guest, Vidya Moorthy, an education and upskilling expert, a communication strategist, CEO of two companies, one in Austin and one in India. It's Clural LLC and Bassett Education India. Vidya focuses on upskilling, multicultural communications, diversity and inclusion, and career development. Did I get it right, Vidya?
You rarely get anything wrong, Olga. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so hi, Vidya. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to ask you a lot of questions and see what you can tell us about your mission and what made you start this path.
Thank you, Olga. I think that's a good point to start and a good place to start. First of all, I just want to say out loud how much respect I have for everything that you have accomplished for the women of Austin. And it's a pleasure to work with you and to help in any capacity that I'm capable of. So thank you for creating the Austin Businesswoman, and thank you for the opportunity to serve on your advisory board. It's great to be here. My name's Vidya Moorthy, like you said, Olga. And I think my passion for education and professional development is pretty deeply rooted. I grew up in another time on another continent. My parents are not college educated, but they did make sure that they empowered me with not one, but two master's degrees, one in India and one here. And that has served me well. It has served me well, and it has transformed my life. And when I moved to Austin last year, as part of my professional efforts to start my work here in Austin, Olga, I looked at some of the workforce development reports for the state of Texas. And what I saw, I was appalled by what I saw. I was hurt by what I saw, that nearly 70%, that's 7 out of 10 Texans, have no access to four-year university at all because it's so cost prohibitive.
Yeah,
and knowing that most Texans don't have access to four-year university, in spite of the fact that we have such giants and jewels here, like the UT, Texas State, Texas A&M, in spite of that. So my passion to, I think, bring education to the masses, to make it understandable, accessible, is really, I think it stems from the fact that my own personal story has been one that has been fueled by the power of education.
This is a very inspiring message, and I'm glad we have experts like you who have global perspective on education, which is why I wanted to ask you, since you've been through both systems, what are the main differences between higher education in India and in the US?
When you say higher education, if you're talking about community colleges and four-year university at the undergraduate and the master's level, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, or you can even start with schools if you believe that some of the difficulties that you mentioned are rooted in the lower levels of education.
Yeah, so I have a kind of a front row view at both. I have daughters who went to schools there as well as here. My younger one goes to a high school here at Vandergrift. I think they're just different systems with pluses on both sides. I think many schools on the other side of the world, I don't think they can hold a candle when it comes to the amount of resources, the variety of programs that schools here have. On the other hand, I think, as much as the schools here offer their students the commitment level of teachers, a teacher is a fantastic human in any corner of the planet. But I think that when it comes to social skills, when it comes to the emotional quotient, when it comes to multitasking, when it comes to certain values, I think, some schools on the other side of the world win. And that perplexes me. And so as far as K through 12 is concerned, I think social intelligence and emotional quotients and the ability to build, I think, relationships that can last is something that our youngsters can learn a little bit better. On the college side, one of the greatest aspects, I think, of the American university system is its inbuilt flexibility. Your inbuilt flexibility to choose whatever you want and to be able to change course midway. And of course, the second advantage is the infrastructure and your access to experts and information. And I think that's pretty unmatched in any corner of the world. But then again, on the other side of the world, I think that there is it's way more rigorous. Yeah, and so you will find that students who are even in master's programs or undergraduate programs have a very high level of discipline. They have a very deep sense of purpose as well. And they put in more efforts to make sure, for example, that they're placed in organizations the day they graduate. And so they have more concerted, more scientifically thought out plans of what they'll do after they graduate.
Yeah, and I think that's the imbalance that makes it difficult for people from different cultures come here with a brilliant degree and be at a loss about the system, about employment, about opportunities, really. And I know that you work with post-education steps too, which I don't think we have enough. We have education system, we have workforce. We don't have something that helps people migrate smoothly from one to the other, because a lot of American kids, a lot of people who come here from other countries, they expect to get what they do for their education, but nobody prepared them for the job interviews, for tests, for whatever employers are putting them through. And why do you think there is this disruption? Why do you think we don't have that force that helps people pass from one to the other?
Great question, Olga. Great question. So the academia and universities and colleges are one of the three branches that Clural works with. And what we have for students is a campus to corporate transition program. And to answer your question, I think that when international students come here, they have a very comprehensive orientation program. But this orientation program predominantly addresses the logistics in the system. It talks about, how you get your social security number, or how you get a bank account, or how you apply for a university ID, or even a driver's license, or visa issues. And somehow the aspects of how you merge with corporate America kind of gets left out. And what we do is we come into the graduating batch or even earlier, and we say, hey, before you sit at the interview table, here is how you can have an engaging, casual, empowering discussion with an American. And here's what you're supposed to know because you have adopted this country. So get a grip on the socio-political fabric of this country, understand mainstream America, understand what community means, what it is to give back, understand what is appropriate in terms of behavior, in terms of political sensitivities, in terms of what hot buttons you probably should stay clear of. And not get into those kinds of sensitive discussions, or even styles of humor when it comes to gender issues, how you can talk to a person of another gender with respect, and what DE&I means, even when you are just engaging in a professional conversation, and how you need to be sensitive to those issues. So we equip them with what it takes to come out and really merge with mainstream American society. And that's one of the three things that Clural does.
That's a very valuable service because I'm an immigrant myself. I didn't get education here, but I see in our community a lot of people coming from post-Soviet countries. As you mentioned, they're used to that discipline and inflexible structure of colleges, but also in the workplace when you're getting hired, they're used to be humble. You're not supposed to toot your own horn and talk about the good sides.
Mhm.
And it is still okay in a lot of places to not be inclusive. So your employer might demand a picture of you before they get an interview with you, or ask for your age, if you're planning to have kids, which why they're asking, and all those things. So people coming here, they sometimes cross a lot of lines of not acceptable because they're used to a different way of thinking. Is that consistent across immigrants, or is it just one country perspective? What did you notice that's ragingly different?
All of what you mentioned, Olga, and I think that it's only natural. If I were to pick up my bags and move to the town that you're originally from, I would have an incredible amount to unlearn and relearn, right? And if you ever move to India, gosh, you would have to start over as well. I think that's part of the experience of being an immigrant, and that's the journey that motivates us. And that's why we all dare to leave home. And wherever we are, we're motivated to not only become our best selves, but to give back to the community and the country that gives us so much. And we have a responsibility as well to do that, to improve the condition that we operate in any way, no matter how small. Right. So in terms of what all you have to change, it might be all of the above. There are legal aspects, the way that you carry yourself, the nonverbals, how close do you stand to a person when you're talking to them? If you stand as far away from a person in India as you stand in the US, they'd be really offended, because they'll be like, oh, you don't think you have to stand that far off? And they'd even say it to you. They'll be like, come closer. Yeah, because it's just the way that the social fabric is. So there, I think you do have to examine your disposition in multiple ways, and it's a part of the experience, and it's the part of an exposure. It challenges you to do things differently, to believe differently, to act differently, and that's what compels us to become a better version of ourselves.
That's so true. I love this that statement, and I wish more people who enter the education system understood that, because it would make their transition to workplace so much easier. Do you also work with American students who were born and raised here, because they are struggling too?
Absolutely. The campus to corporate transition is not uniquely for international students. A lot of American students can benefit, as both you and I know. I think when you look at more complex organizations which have a multi-generational workforce, they're really struggling to engage people from generations X, Y, and Z, right? Z is not yet in the workforce, of course, but I think what is it that our young adults can know about the corporate world that prepares them for it? Because the tone with which I think words are exchanged is hugely different in a corporate environment as opposed to a college environment. Even if it is a formal conversation with your professor, even then, the way that you put your point across, the way that you negotiate, the way that you handle conflict, the way that you compliment, the way that you engage in humor, everything is different in the corporate world. So these are the kinds of things that we teach them a little bit. And what that does really, Olga, is it really accelerates their careers in the first 5 to 8 years of their life, because their managers can see that, hey, this young adult displays an unusually high level of professional maturity. And as both you and I know, that's really what I think puts you on the fast track to career growth, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, nobody teaches kids these terms, maybe because academia, it's not their focus to directly feed into workplace. Sometimes it feels like that, because when you visit a college campus, you see this shrine of opportunity. And as you mentioned, flexibility and individual interests and preferences and freedoms being at highest respect. And I really love the atmosphere there. And sometimes I catch myself thinking, well, my daughter is here now. It feels like such a great place to be. But does this place prepare her for sometimes this soulless environment where you become a cog in a big machine of some big corporate company or an organization where you have maybe an ugly little office and annoyed managers who are short with you. So I wonder where they get it wrong, because the levels of education and material that's being taught is very high, but all that meta level of preparing for professional maturity, as you meant, it's lacking. So I wonder if the institution as a whole can change that.
Yeah, and I love working with young adults, Olga, and I will only say to that I'm in awe of their levels of knowledge, their levels of exposure, their dexterity when it comes to learning new skills. They're very fast learners, and they have some immense positive aspects. They're masters of developing shortcuts and more efficient ways of working. And I'm humbled by some of the younger adults that I work with, because they're so sharp, way sharper than I was for sure at their age. And I think that organizations can benefit from their immense positives that entire new generation of employees brings in. But like you rightly said, I think it's really about helping them understand the real world. The real world, which is a little bit more ruthless, which is not as congenial as a college campus, and also to hold oneself to such high levels of accountability that is demanded in a workplace, and making them aware of how serious things like integrity and ethicality are, and what constitutes non-ethical behavior. They would be amazed to even know that what they did in college amongst their friends, or just how they worked on projects, would not be acceptable in the workplace, right? So it's just showing them the smaller aspects. But just like in life, I think the smaller things are the ones that matter most, and I think that's what we try to help college students with.
Thank you for doing that. I'm glad that now we're starting to delve into this kind of problems and try to understand how to survive this transition. But I wanted to go back to the original argument that you mentioned, that 7 out of 10 kids in Texas don't get access to education. So I'm not even speaking about good career, but even the step behind it, the education. What would you underline as the main reasons of that? Because America is the richest country in the world, and the social policies here are better than where I came from, but it seems like it's not really working in the educational system.
It's a good question, Olga, and I'm afraid it's a pretty complex one. I think that when you say that 7 out of 10 people in Texas don't have access to a four-year college, nothing really stops them from applying to a four-year institution. But I think it is the cost of education that makes it prohibitive. That, and added on with a dramatic rise in the cost of living, the pandemic, the economic uncertainty that perpetuates the entire globe at the moment. I think all of these combine to form the perfect storm, which is why I'm such a firm believer in community colleges that make education and provide open door services for Americans and international students to come in and to create more meaning and substance in their professional lives. So to me, one, it would appear that it is cost. Point number two, I think, is when you are a first generation college applicant in your family, and you don't have anybody to show you the ropes, the process could be daunting. It could be so intimidating to, look at universities, websites, programs, to write a statement of purpose, to approach people for letters of recommendations, to craft your resume, to, make sure that your mark sheets get in, to even appear for your SAT or your GRE or your GMAT. All of these, that there's a very small percentage of the population that are extremely familiar with all of these. And I think it is because it's so daunting, it can be an alien process to people whose families don't have many generations of those who have attended college. And that is why I believe that we have the shared responsibility to make sure that people have the access to information, to knowledge that can change their lives.
I agree, and that they are not afraid to ask questions, because a lot of times they can get help from their school or from any public resources, but they don't know where to ask. They're too afraid to ask. They are afraid that they will just be sent back home, or they look at their classmate whose parents already did everything for them, and they're like, well, I can't handle all this adulting on my own.
Exactly.
And I agree, it's a daunting process. So apart from the cost, it's the paperwork, logistics, and I'd say this transparent filtering that's in place. It makes it really difficult.
Sure.
Tell us more about Clural. What are the main verticals of your services, and who you mentioned that you work with educational institutions? What are the particular services you offer to them?
So, like I said, Olga, we work predominantly in three different groups. We work with colleges and universities and young adults. That's one group, and we've spoken about them. The second group that we work with is the corporate world, where we conduct and curate programs for different companies, depending on their intended outcomes for their own employees. Most of the time, and since it's an area of specialty for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a natural ask from some of our clients, just because we have managed to build a clientele that includes Asia, Europe, as well as North America. And providing these services across three continents gives me a very unique perspective, blesses me with a very unique perspective on global diversity, which is very different from the American traditional framework of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we curate these programs for our corporate clients. And sometimes, in order to bring about systemic change in diversity, equity, and inclusion, oftentimes employees also need to alter their attitudes, behaviors, and opinions. And therefore, a natural component of our programs might be shifts in thinking, shifts in attitudes, and shifts in behaviors. So for our corporate clients, what we traditionally try to do is we ask them what their problem is, or we ask them what they're trying to accomplish, and we work backwards and curate a program for their employee base. And usually it's not, it's a pretty involved process, because it starts off with just conversations, usually with the learning and development team or the human resources team. And we have pre-program interviews, we have pre-program evaluations, and then we present the content outline and our intentions to the HR team. And only after that do we engage in program delivery. After program delivery, Olga, we have an extensive feedback mechanism where we go back to the leadership and we tell them what we think would be best for their employees, or how the employees reacted to the program. And of course, what's most important to us is to hear them out on what they think about our performance. So we try to make it as tangible and as measurable as possible. So that's what we do with the corporate world, Olga, which is our second segment. Our third segment is we work with organizations, associations, and nonprofits to develop programs for their members. And sometimes these members might be a group of women entrepreneurs, like Austin businesswomen. And I am in awe of people, men and women, who without a business education have managed to build meaningful businesses, sustainable businesses in their own communities. And I'd love to demystify the business jargon that exists inside business schools. So I love to take that information, the pillars of any business program are marketing, finance, operations, human resources, and technology. And I love to demystify that and simplify it and deliver it in smaller, chewable bites. So that's our third area of expertise. So basically, we work with universities and colleges, we work with companies, and we work with organizations or nonprofits.
That's great to hear. And I wanted to comment on the third pillar that you work with. I think it's so important to give people an opportunity to fill gaps in their theoretical knowledge. If they started from ground up, they started from work path, they started a business. So they're working already, they didn't do the academic path, they didn't get a college degree, but they still miss some things that can't be learned on practice, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to use tools and practices that are already wide known, so you can apply them to your own business. And as a representative of the small entrepreneur community, I'm really grateful that we have people like you who can show us how it's done in big MBA programs, but break it down, as you said, in chewable pieces so we can absorb it as we go with our businesses. And I think that's a great mission. I don't know many organizations that do that.
Thank you, Olga. If there is one takeaway that our viewers or our listeners might want to take away from this talk, it's this. If we don't upskill ourselves, if we're not in the mode of unlearning and relearning every so often as a continuous process, we will cease to exist. Our businesses will cease to exist. Let's put it that way. Our businesses will cease to exist. 7 out of 10 jobs that were in demand in 2010 did not even exist in 2004. We have no idea of how this conversation will happen 20 years from now. If we were in 2042, Olga, this conversation, we have no clue what we'll be talking about in 2042. So in order to ensure that we build stable futures, sustainable businesses, and also leave behind a legacy that can be continued by future generations, upskilling yourself, engaging in professional development is a given. How many of us knew of Zoom 3 years ago? I know I didn't.
Me either.
And today it's a verb, it's a noun, it's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just a small example. And we don't even know where the world is going. I don't claim to know economically, politically, even the climate. We have no idea what's happening. So all that we can do is to continue to invest in ourselves. And it doesn't mean you have to change your life and go back to college. And that's not possible. Of course, it's not even necessary. But yes, you can find an hour every month to upskill yourself. I think that's worth it.
It is totally worth it. And thank you for letting people prepare for any kind of future, because across the pillars you work with, you let people learn to be flexible culturally, financially, geographically, in any kind of way. You let people prepare them for learning always learning, because you never know what skill will be needed in the future. And you help people to learn to be accepting and tolerant with other people. That's what you're doing for corporate setting. That's what you're doing for companies and big institutions. And I think you're filling a very big gap in the community. And I really appreciate what you're doing for everyone, for the young people, old people, immigrants, and Americans alike.
Yeah, thank you, Olga. But it is a calling. It's a responsibility, and I hope to do my best to answer that call. And talking about upskilling, when I heard your story of you're coming here and learning yourself, teaching yourself how to drive as a starting point, and then to see you become a force that empowers other women, and the number of events that you host, the platforms that you provide, your online digest magazine that is a great tool for anyone to gain more visibility, to build their networks, your access to experts that you provide for your members. This is a shining example of somebody not just upskilling themselves, but building a machine that provides opportunity to those that they're surrounded by. So that's exactly what I mean. You're a shining example of that. So I'm preaching to the choir here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so kind of you. And I have the last question, which is not about professional development. So tell us more about Vidya outside of work.
Vidya outside of work is this is a really strange fact. I absolutely love doing chores in the house. And that's my downtime. I cherish it, and I switch on my music at home. And I have a dog who sheds quite a bit, so I have to vacuum clean every day. She's a fabulous lab, and I don't mind it. So whether it's vacuum cleaning, I make at least 2 meals a day. We're vegetarian, so I enjoy chopping veggies and cooking, and my daughters cook with me. And it's a big thing in the family. So I absolutely love chores. I love dusting. I love watering my plants. I love vacuuming. I love doing the laundry. And that's really where I think while I'm working. I just go into my zone, and folks around me know that they shouldn't interrupt that kind of me time that I have. I'm also, I spend a lot of time catching up with friends, Olga. I'm one of those few who's been fortunate enough to have never lost touch with a friend right from kindergarten. So I have different sets of friends that I'm still in touch with, and they are my chosen family. And I believe that those are the kinds of relationships that I choose to invest my personal time in, because that's my real wealth. And so if anybody had to remember or know anything about me, it would be those two strange things.
I didn't know that, but it's a great thing to be passionate about, especially the chores.
Yes.
Because you have to do them anyway, so you better love doing them.
Yeah, I just love it. Isn't it fun to make grocery lists and oh gosh, yeah, it's my thing, man. It really is. I love it. Sometimes my husband jokes that, if I was a cleaner, he says you would have had your second dream career if I went house to house as a cleaning service.
That's hilarious, but I'm really jealous that that's your passion. I wish more of us were just,
Yeah,
more amazing.
I know.
Like you.
I know, but I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And on this note, Vidya Moorthy, anyone, reach out to her. What's the best way to get in contact with you or get a consultation about your services?
So you can visit our website. It's www.clural.co, CLURAL, or you can just email me at vidya.moorthy@gmail.com. That's my first name, my last name @gmail.com. I'm more active on Facebook and LinkedIn. So anybody, shoot me a message there. We're all always connected with our electronic tethers. So you will hear from me for sure when you reach out to me any one of those ways.
Thank you for sharing. Connect with Vidya. Every day you meet her, every time you meet her, you'll learn a new skill or a new interesting fact. So that was wonderful. Thank you, Vidya.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Olga. Thank you for doing everything that you do to help me and thousands of others. Thousands soon, because I want to see ABW hit 1,000 members soon.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.